This conversation is going to be about from homes to hospitality, short-term rentals, a very big elephant in the room, this one. Short-term rentals in Africa's hospitality economy. I'll be joined by my panelists, Mutheu Muna-Mwaniki, Linda Bekoe, and Rael Phillips. A round of applause, please, as they make their way to stage. If you don't clap for my panelists, ne? Okay, let's just jump right into it. Stigmas. I want us to find solutions more than actually raise the challenges. So whatever we're going to be doing, can I just ask for a little bit of silence in the room and attention to the stage? The feedback is quite loud for us. If there's other conversations, I appreciate you all so much. I promise that we'll make it interesting. I always find that it's better if we don't just raise challenges as a panelist, but rather if there are challenges that need to be addressed, we also find solutions for this. Otherwise, we'll end up with conferences just raising challenges, and we need to really advance. And I love the fact that it's called Future. We're the ones who are creating the future. And so I'll start right there with you, Rael. What is the stigma around STRs? And if there is a stigma around them, how do we overcome it?
So there's quite a few stigmas around short-term rentals in general. Everything from it being more informal, inconsistent. I think if you had asked that question 10 or 12 years ago, you would have been 100% correct. It was extremely fragmented, and it's one of the reasons why we actually started this business. Is we saw that there was a huge disparity and gap between traditional hotel, inconsistent Airbnb, and there was nothing in between. And so what ended up happening was everyone wants the consistency of a hotel. That's the truth. You want to check in, you don't want the to rock up and your Airbnb host or your short-term rental host isn't there and the place hasn't been cleaned. And that's kind of what we've seen over the last 10 years is it's evolved, and it's been this rapid professionalization of that sector, where it is so close to staying in a hotel that it goes against what all the stigmas usually say. That's what we try to solve. We try to standardize, we try to make things consistent, we try to create this guest experience that you would find at any great hotel that you've ever stayed at around the world. So, yeah, I think it's come a long way. I think there are still probably a lot of amateurs playing in the field, but there's also a lot of professional businesses and management companies that are trying to solve a problem.
I'm going to stick with you. So you opened up by saying, had I asked that question 10, 12 years ago, then it would be relevant because it was fragmented. Are you saying there are no stigmas at the moment around STRs?
No, there definitely are. I mean, one of the big topics currently is regulation. You'll hear every hotelier shouting.
Just clarifying.
Yeah, just to clarify. And it is still quite sensitive. I mean, they've started regulating, globally in all the major cities. Where we are based in Cape Town, regulation will come in very soon. We think it's a good thing. Again, I think we've leaned into a completely different side of short-term rentals. We now view ourselves more as a hotel management company than we do 12 years ago, which was a vacation rental business. But there will always be the stigma that we're knocking at the door. And I think the beautiful thing is that the lines have blurred so much that if you stayed in a pod hotel right now, you would feel like you're staying at any hotel in the world. There's 24-hour reception, there's hotel-grade linen, there's free Wi-Fi, there's everything you would expect at a hotel and everything that you kind of love about a home. So, yeah.
I'd like to disagree a little bit. And I think one of the stigmas, and I'm going to come through to you, Mutheu, is that being in a STR, the safety is not as great as hotels. Mm-hmm. Whether that is true or false is, you can answer that to me. And perhaps you can just touch on that and just unpack that a little bit. Do you think that safety is standardized? I think that's one of the top things that people do look for when they go to stay in a place, even more so than the great linen and the great, accessories.
Yes, I do think the safety standards in short-term rentals are different from hotels, and different in the sense that a hotel will have the whole property is managed. So you'll find, like with our serviced apartment hotels, we manage the entire thing from security to check-in to room safety, etc. A lot of short-term rentals, and I'll just talk about the Nairobi landscape, you'll find that maybe it's one apartment in a block of 50 apartments. And you're not necessarily, you the owner, while you may have influence over the rest of the ecosystem, you're not in control of that ecosystem. But I think, again, and to what Rael has said, I think that's where the benefit of management is, professional management of STRs, is because we come in, we start to look at that landscape, and even as we take your individual unit, for us, for example, we try and then reach the homeowners association of that establishment and begin to sensitize, because everybody wants safety. Everybody wants that sense of security where they stay, whether it's my primary home or it's my STR business.
Right.
And then there's the aspect of safety of when you're in the unit. Now the safety standards in terms of, is there, fire extinguishers, fire blankets, that sort of thing. Again, as an individual owner, if you're operating on yourself, you learn these things after the fact. There'll be an incident and then you'll be like, oops, should have had insurance for that, or oops, should have invested in this. Whereas for us, from a professional perspective, we've already experienced those things, and so we come in, and if you look at the checklist that I typically give new owners, and they're like, oh, why do you have a fire extinguisher and a fire blanket and insurance? And I'm like, because you'll need them. And if we never, ever use them, great, but you never want to find yourself in a situation where you needed them and didn't have them. So yes, the safety standards in a hotel and in an STR are different, but I think with professional management, we're starting to see that gap closing between the hotels and the STRs.
I'm going to go through to, and I think that's part of learning. Thank you for putting that anecdote. Oops, we don't know that we need them. And I suppose they can't learn really from hotel groups, because hotel groups have a different offering, and yet it's similar in the sense that you're also still hosting human beings. I can't help but ask, Linda, do you think STRs are filling in a gap that hotels can't fill in? And if yes, what is that gap?
I think for me, it's not necessarily about filling in the gap. It's about looking at the customer. I always start the journey with the customer, because if you're looking at different people that are traveling now, you've got multi-generational travel, you've got corporate people that are traveling for longer, and they would like the short-term rentals. So it's not necessarily filling in that gap, but it's about looking at the demand and looking at what people actually want. Because what you are finding is that if people are coming with their families, the hotel might not be the best solution because of cost or so many other reasons. So it's not filling the gap. I think that it's about diversifying. And if people are thinking that short-term rentals are not here to stay, I think they definitely are. I think it's important for operators to really look at how they can have hotels and have short-term rentals as well, and diversify their products.
But then isn't that a gap in itself, if the hotels are not offering it for family? Because if they then were to create that for family, then there wouldn't be really a gap for STRs. So do you think that the diversification should stay separated, or should hotels start thinking of also offering in that diversification space?
I think what I'm finding, especially in my space, and forgive me, I'm talking from maybe the UK and Asia and other aspects, is that we've seen a lot of the apart hotel model. So you're finding a lot of hotels that are now going into apartments where they have 2 or 3 apartment units as well. So you do see them going into that.
Right.
And they've recognized the fact that, in terms of the length of stay is longer, the distribution cost is less. So I think that you need to look at all of these things, but is it filling a gap? I still believe that it's diversifying.
Okay. Maybe let me address the elephant in the room with Rael. Do you think that STRs are a threat to the hotel industry?
I think they were a threat probably a number of years ago. I mean,
Okay.
look, service departments have been around before my time. I've been in this game for 12 years. I think when we came in, there was a very obvious gap around like creating the flexibility. I mean, the largest hotel groups have residence components to their hotels, but I think what was missing was having the flexibility in one building and being able to build on that. So our first apart hotel had 22 rooms. That was it. There was nothing else. Our new apart hotel that will open in 2 weeks has a restaurant on the 5th floor, a rooftop deck with a pool, a bar, a little co-working space. Some of the others have podcast studios. I mean, the value that's getting packed into these buildings now is as close to the experience that you will get at any hotel. The biggest difference and the most overlooked is that our units have kitchens.
Yeah.
So typically, if you want to stay for 1 night, great. If you want to stay for 21 nights,
Yeah.
fantastic. If you want to stay for 6 months, go ahead. You'll pay a daily rate, but you'll be able to live like a local, even if you're a corporate, as she said. The use case and the optionality is far greater. So yes, I strongly believe it is a threat, but there's a good synergy between both. I think they should coexist, and they do.
Yeah, and I love that we have very diverse answers there, because they're a threat, but they're not filling in a gap, but they're a threat. And this is viewpoints, and that's the beauty of seeing it from a different stance. Now, our topic, Linda, speaks about from homes to hospitality, which means this industry is now opening up for more and more people to turn their homes into hospitality and then have them as then STRs if they'd like to do so to earn income. But throughout the conference, we've had this buzzword going, sustainability, sustainability, sustainability. But sustainability isn't just about the planet. It's also ensuring that people who would like to get into the space, especially for the next generation, are able to do so. How do we ensure that we give them a slice of the pie as well in order to get into the space without it being taken over, but just the big brands? It's all great and well to speak sustainability, but is it practical?
I think I will look at it from a distribution lens. And when I look at, having spent 2 decades looking at distribution and how distribution is, if you look at the whole distribution landscape, it's probably built for the larger brands and not so much the small operators. But this is where I believe that you need to really educate yourself in terms of the different aspects, or how you can, make sure that your property has the right distribution, and looking at your cost of sale and your cost of acquisition. And this is where I think new entrances can really come in, because if you can minimize your distribution cost, then you can ensure that you're sustainable as well, and you come into the market understanding what your acquisition is. And I'm very, very passionate about acquisition and cost of sale, because I think that this is something that is always overlooked, because it is very important that once you get the rate, you start to break it down into everything that you've actually paid, and you will see that the rate that you're getting, you could actually get a better rate if you did it another way.
We had a rep from United Nations here on stage yesterday, and Mutheu, I want to ask you this question, because we need to find tangible, practical solutions. United Nations has reports that have now been used by other people that says in a few years' time, most people will be entrepreneurs and they're the ones who will create jobs. I can't help but think that this is one of the spaces where we can create more entrepreneurs and create more jobs and help people be employable and create, it's the whole teach a man, you can catch a fish for a man or teach a man to fish. How do we utilize this space in order to create jobs for people and create more entrepreneurs?
Yes, I think in two ways, directly and indirectly.
Yes.
Directly in the sense that once, you set up a hotel, he's setting up one now. We just set up one last year, late last year. And you set up the service department or an STR or whatever it is, and you find that then I need housekeeping, I need maintenance, I need somebody to do the e-commerce on my behalf, somebody to do digital marketing and stuff like that. So you find directly, then I have a team that does all that. And I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, we've just set up an STR in a place called Nyeri, which is in the central province. And I was talking to this lady, and she's like, I'm so passionate about cleaning. She's not formally trained in housekeeping, but we've taken her, we've brought her to Nairobi, we've put her in one of our hotels for her to understudy the housekeeping for 2 weeks, because she's got the right instincts about housekeeping. And then we're going to send her back. So I've created one direct job with that. And perhaps it's more economical for me if I need repairs done to first use the guy who knows the guy who knows the guy rather than bring a guy from Nairobi. So there's direct employment, but there's also indirect employment, because then I need linen supply. I need, if the guests want catering, then I need to do grocery shopping, and I need to do, so the grocery shopping, the vegetable shopping will come from a farm next door, and that farm will employ other people and that sort of thing. So you find, I think hospitality is one of those industries that definitely creates a lot of jobs, both directly and indirectly. And it also, for us as Trianum Hospitality, it answers the SDG issue of employment for women and youth.
Right.
Because invariably you'll find that, for us about 60 to 70% of our direct employees are women and youth. And then there's the indirect jobs that we create with, and sometimes we're very sensitive about where we buy things. So you'll find we're buying carpets or artwork or deco items from social programs that support youth in danger, that support women who are in danger in society and that sort of thing. So I do think it's that one of those industries where we can be very deliberate, and the creation of employment can be very immediate and have far-reaching repercussions.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the SDGs, because I think a lot of people look to UN and they think they're going to implement them. They created them. It's for us. And that's why I like tangible examples of how do we implement that, because by 2 years ago, the SDGs had only reached 14% success rate.
Yes.
And it's because we're all waiting for somebody to do something when we have the power to do something about it. But I can't help but think, you spoke about security in the beginning, you just spoke about somebody as well who wants to learn. Standardization of some sort needs to happen.
Yes.
And in hotel, we talk about grading. How do we then start to standardize? And I'm not talking standardization across the globe or across Africa. Let me stick to Africa because it's Africa. Standardization might be different in different countries, but just so we don't fall into the same trap where when you travel somewhere, the 3-star there is like a 1-star in another place. How do we start to standardize this industry?
I think conversations like this are very helpful, because then he's from South Africa. I lived in Botswana for a while. I'm back in Nairobi. We travel, you go to Dubai, you go to America, you go to Europe, and you begin to see all these places, and you come back and you're like, it's true. A guest who is looking for a 4-star in Dubai should not come to Kenya and be like,
exactly.
Is this a 4-star?
Exactly.
But I think regulation in two senses. One is at the macro level, and we've seen our own tourism authority here start to put out regulatory standards. When they're doing that, they do benchmark. So they benchmark with other ecosystems that have done this before and borrow from that. while trying to retain the, I'll make up a word, Kenyanese in the standards. So there's that level. I think for STR owners, when you get management companies, you begin to standardize at a micro level, because now you start, for us, we give them standard operating procedures, and we say, this is how check-in needs to be done, this is how cleaning needs to be done, this is how maintenance should be reported, escalated, sorted out, and reported back.
Right.
That sort of thing. So I think at the macro level, it's typically guided by industry and government in conjunction with each other. At the micro level, that's where professional management comes in and begins to lend some of those standards to the industry.
Yeah, maybe that's a business idea for somebody here. Come up with a standardization model and principles that are signed off for everybody on how we can then run STRs, because somebody has to start it in order for it to be done. Rael, let me ask you your question. So, when you look into the future, let's say 10 years, what do you think the ecosystem is going to look like?
Oh, I mean, I've always liked to think I can look in a crystal ball, but what I thought 10 years ago is very different to where we are now.
Yeah.
I mean, just on the topic of jobs, I think, funnily enough, this industry is probably one of the safest. Everyone talks about AI, but I read an article the other day that if you're a lawyer or anything in a professional service, you're in trouble, and plumbers are going to be earning more. So quite comforting to think that everyone is more than likely going to lean into some form of AI to assist their business. You talk about standardization. I think in the next 10 years, this industry specifically will be fully standardized. There is a blueprint already. The hotels have set it out for everyone. They live by strict guidelines, each of the brands. Somewhere in between is where the truth lies in a resi component. And all you have to do is just apply those rules and standardize across your portfolio. You said something interesting about, you get a 4-star here, but you don't get the same 4-star here. I would love to think that in 10 years' time, that shouldn't be true, that you should have the same experience, it just should be localized.
Yes.
So there are brands already that are exactly like that. You could go to the W on the Palm and the W in Budapest, and they are completely different locally. They're hyper-localized, but it's the same feeling that you get from the brand. So I think in 10 years' time, there will be big changes. I know a lot of the hotel groups are leaning into bringing in, companies like us with their soft brands, etc., because they have to.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of consolidation, as there has been in the last 10 years. So exciting.
Exciting, I think, for me, the takeout here is entrepreneurship is there for you to take. It's up to you to decide if you want to take it for yourself here in Africa. There's jobs to be created. We know from research and data that there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurs employing people, particularly in Africa. Here's where it's at. Decide what you want to do about it. Thank you, everybody. Linda, Rael, and Mutheu.